with that, thank you very much for reaching out to me, and I'm glad we could do this interview.
Yeah, man, no, thanks a lot for agreeing to do it. This is great. Like, fuck, this is like the first proper interview I've done for Blackguard in a long time, so it's awesome.
Well, I'm absolutely honored that I could be that first guy to be able to do that in such a long time, and what a great album to be able to be talking about here. I mean, it's so great to be able to see a new Blackguard album in 2020 with Storm, and I mean, I love this thing from start to finish. I love all the guests that were able to be a part of this to really fill out the album, and yeah, just from top to bottom, this is a Blackguard album I've been waiting for, and I didn't realize I needed it.
Fuck, man, I'm really happy you think so. It's like it's kind of weird, I guess, like putting it out so many years after the fact, because I mean, like the reality of the situation is that like it was basically sitting in a hard drive for a long time, you know, and it was just kind of like finding the right time and the resources to, I suppose, put it out, and you know, when it actually did, you know, it was kind of funny because like I didn't listen to it for a very long time, you know, when we went on our hiatus, and then when we were finishing up the mix for it, and I got to, you know, kind of re-listen to it again with fresh ears, I was like, man, this was a good record, you know, like I'm really like, and I was a little disappointed that we didn't put it out, you know, when we were, I guess, more active, but you know, better late than never, I suppose.
Yeah, and, you know, with it, I mean, being such a longtime fan and being able to see you guys so many times, I mean, it was great to be able to see that there was a new album that was in the works, even if it did take a while for it to come out, and I'm just thankful that it did come out, because I think it was worth the wait from the fan standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people seem to be saying that, which is really, it's very encouraging. You know, it means we were actually onto something, and you know, I'm happy that we didn't, you know, kind of officially call it quits and just sort of like shelve the record or whatever. That like, I'm happy we were able to share this with everybody. So, I mean, it was a very important piece of work for us when we were writing it, when we were recording it. It just kind of sucks that, you know, by the situation that happened, that we, you know, it didn't come out at a, you know, in a more timely manner, I suppose.
Yeah, and you know, it's weird from that standpoint. You know, it's like it's been almost a decade since the last Blackguard album, and I know you guys were able to tour so much behind the last album, and you know, just like being able to see you guys, and then of course everything that can happen with a band. You know, just like all the terrible things that can happen with a band. We've all experienced it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that's pretty much why I don't have an album with my name on it, because I'm so used to bands falling apart at all the wrong times.
Oh man, it's so true. But like, man, the business in general, man, it eats up a lot of bands and spits them right back out, man. It's a fucking terrifying machine once you kind of get balls deep into it, and then you know, you kind of hope that you get out of it with at least some sanity, and you pray that you're not completely broke, and you know, you have your mental faculties. You know.
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, with that in mind, I mean, obviously with having this album stored for such a long time, and then going back and revisiting it, I mean, what was that like for you to, like, the first time that you actually went back and listened to those songs and thought that it might be a good idea to put them out after all this time?
Well, I mean, kind of like, well, I guess what I touched on a little before is that, like, man, like I didn't listen to those songs for years, and then, like, you know, when we finally started talking about the possibility about putting it out and how we wanted to do it, and then, you know, having to address some of the, like, just finishing up the mix and master of it, it was really refreshing and encouraging being able to listen to kind of like a snapshot of what was going on like 5 years ago, or like maybe 6 years prior, whenever the fuck we started writing this goddamn record. But like, it was really cool going back and listening to it with fresh ears, you know, and I think a lot of musicians and a lot of musicians and a lot of engineers and producers will probably echo this sentiment, is that like when you're in the writing process and the recording process, and you're listening to the same songs over and over and over again, it's not so uncommon to just like, you know, start fucking loathing the piece of work that you're doing, but because you're listening to it over and over and over and over again. So, you know, like I know some people and some musicians that in the writing process, like they'll write a song and then they won't touch it for a couple of weeks and then revisit it with fresh ears again to kind of, you know, hear what they weren't listening, or hear the things that they weren't listening to, or to listen to the things they weren't hearing before. So in this case, it was like, it wasn't just a couple of weeks, it was a couple of years. And then like going back to these songs and going like, fuck man, they were big. Like, I was super encouraged about the album, and I've never had that feeling before putting out a record, because normally, like in the normal process of it, like, we write it, we record it, we put it out, we play it to death, and I fucking hate the songs before we even did the stage with them, just because we've already listened to them a million times. In this case, it was almost the opposite, where like, we wrote and recorded it, left it on, we put it on ice for 5-6 years. And then by the time we came back to it, it's like, man, like it was just so encouraging hearing how great the songs turned out and how awesome everybody's input was, and the musicianship that went into it, and the love and the care that went into crafting these songs, and I think they're great songs. I think they're amazing songs. And it's such a it's like, I know every artist, a lot of bands like to say that every record they put out is their best album, but this is unquestionably our best record writing wise. Like no doubt in my mind. So it made it that much more encouraging, and it made us it gave me a lot more what's the word? It gave me a lot more energy and put in wanting to sort of get things going again, and to really see the record through, and to actually put it out, and to to give it to the fans to listen to.
Oh yeah, and it's so great that this album did come to see the light of day for all those reasons. And especially when you're under contract to a label, there's so many tour opportunities, fans are just like begging you to go everywhere and to hear new music, and there's all this pressure of just being in a band that it can really get the best of you at times. And sometimes if you do go on a hiatus for whatever reason, and you do have an album that the fans haven't heard yet, and you just let it sit there for a while, and then you come back to it, that can be the best thing that can happen for a band, because it does respark that creativity. You're able to hear those songs, you remember what made you want to be in that band in the first place, and rejuvenizes you. And I'm glad to see that that's starting to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so not only that, so like we put out the record on the same day that we were doing, we did like a hometown show with Epica and the Agonists too, and it was like the first Blackguard show in Montreal in like 7 years or something like that. And so it felt really good to not only put out the record, but to do a first, a hometown show, first in 6 years or whatever, all on the same day. Like, it felt like this grand rebirth in a way, and I don't know, I mean, I can't tell you how far we're going to take it necessarily, but it just felt good it was very cathartic, because this is something that, and like everybody in the band, well, like Terry and Justine will probably tell you the same things, that like, it was kind of like a weird weight from our past that was kind of weighing on us in the last couple of years. Like, what do we do with this piece of art that we put so much time and so much effort and so much love into? And how do we, what are we going to do with the legacy of this band that we spent over a decade, close to 2 decades, culminating, So and that's it. It was like all that over the course of time, where we had to really kind of like think about, like, okay, well, how do we want to approach this? And, if we are going to, come back in whatever capacity that may be, we also had to make sure that we were doing it for, that we all actually wanted to do it, that we all wanted to make sure we wanted to get in the jam together. Or we might as well have just, like officially broken up and just, kind of liquidated the rest of the assets, whatever those were, and just been like, okay, thanks a lot, it was great. But then that would have been kind of lackluster, because like we kind of, I mean, people have noticed that, we kind of did a tour, in what was it, like the end of 2013 with Finchel was our last North American tour. And then after that, we kind of just did nothing. We didn't announce that we were on a hiatus. We just didn't say anything and just went, we just went radio silent. And for me, that felt like we were doing a disservice, we were definitely doing a disservice to ourselves, to, the legacy and the hard work that we put into, the entity that is Blackguard, and we were doing a disservice to the fan, the people that actually wanted to hear new music that we had been, on and off teasing, for so long, and I every time that like I thought we were going to be on the right track to put it out sooner, something happened, or things didn't happen the way they were supposed to, and it just kind of like things sort of fizzled, and life happens, and all of a sudden it starts getting put to the back burner again. So that's not the way I wanted to end the band. I didn't want to be remembered for, just sort of teasing an album and then never putting it out.
Oh, I totally get it. And just like I was talking about before, it's just like I keep thinking about it. Like I have about 3 to 5 albums that I've recorded either in the demo phase or completely recorded, mixed, and mastered that are probably never going to see the light of day because of different reasons. Yeah, like I've gone through the ringer. I've gone through like so many different bands where we get so close to being able to release something, and then something at the 11th hour, like something fell apart and just everything just went to shit. So I completely understand how that goes about, and like, you know, just like the bad stuff that can happen like that, and you know, not wanting to end a band on, you know, on a bad way or something like that. And that's all the more reason why I'm just so happy to see that Storm did see the light of day, the Rejuvination with it, being able to open for Epica, and everything else that's going to be happening in the future as well too. You know, whether it's minimal shows, whether you're doing full scale tours again, or something in between. You know, I'm just glad to see that the creative juices are going back together again in Blackguard.
Yeah, same here. I mean, when we when everything kind of became real again, when we started getting into the rehearsal space and especially preparing for the Epic show, like, man, it felt so fucking good getting back together and seeing everybody again and seeing everybody on a regular basis. And then we were obviously in constant contact with one another because we were also planning the release and getting all the details sort of sorted out. So it just, it felt like home again. It's like, you couldn't help but remember. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when this was my life. Like this was my life revolved around this. At what, like 6 years ago, and between 2000 and I don't even remember, but like early 2000s to 2013, it's like my life was just so consumed with this band, and it's been weird. It was a weird transition, shifting focus away from music, and it's kind of a weird transition again, like retransition. It's another weird transition, refocusing onto music now. So it's like but it's cool. But I like it, and I remember what I loved about it too.
Oh, totally. And a little bit of a sidetrack when it comes in the music. I mean, I thought it was really cool a few years back when you were able to work for a little while with Crimson Shadows. I love the guys in that band, and I was glad that you were able to fill in the way that you did as long as you did.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it wound up just being like a couple of shows, and we were working on a new record, and I mean, part of me is really disappointed that couldn't go, that ultimately that didn't wind up going further. That we couldn't, that we weren't in a position to. We weren't able to finish the record, and we didn't, because when I first joined them, I thought that I wanted to get back on a full-time band and to go back on the road, because it wasn't too long after Blackguard had kind of started taking his hiatus, and frankly, at the time, I wasn't sure if Blackguard was ever going to get back together. I kind of was under the impression that well, maybe it's just never going to happen, so why not jump on another band, or jump with another band, and not only that, a bunch of guys who I'm very good friends with, and music whom I love and everything. So being with them, but then unfortunately, once I started engaging with the band and being with them, the difficulties of being a singer in Montreal and having a band and playing in a band in Toronto, which is 6 hours away, and not on a professional scale, in the sense that obviously there's bands that have international members, but normally when they do it, they're okay, there's a full label machine behind them, and they'll get together, rehearse, and then they'll go on tour for a month. But it was a little difficult. It was more difficult because we weren't going on tour. We were just kind of doing some one-offs here and there sort of thing. And it just became really difficult to be able to kind of leave my full-time job for take 3-4 days off work for one-off show. Just became it's just impossible. One travel day, one rehearsal day, and another travel day back home. It just wasn't a conducive scenario whatsoever. So ultimately, that just kind of wound up fizzling out, and I decided it was a much better idea for me to just step aside, because I couldn't really fill the shoes properly. What needed to be done with the band. But now they got Jimmy back, their original singer, which is fucking great, because he's amazing, and he was out of the scene for a long time, and I'm really happy to see him back fronting the band, because he is the voice of Crimson Shadows. So fucking hell, man, I'm more than ecstatic to see what they're doing right now and what's going to be coming from them too. So.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, with that said, I mean, with them working on a new record and, of course, a Storm finally coming out for people to be able to hear now. I mean, 2 weeks ago, the album finally came out for everybody to be able to hear. I mean, it's great to see some great Canadian metal getting worked on, being released, and, you know, just showing that good music comes from everywhere. And even with the hardships that come from being in a band, as we both experience, as Crimson Shadows experience, like so many other bands, if not every single band ever has ever had to deal with. You know, it's great to be able to get through those hardships and, you know, have that strive for music to still be able to still want to do it. I mean, after everything that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, there's definitely scenarios where, like, you hear about, like, you know, members that were in that were in touring bands that just kind of like they hit that point and then they never wanted to do it again. They never wanted to, you know, they people that really got like super burnt out and jaded from the business. And like, I'm happy that those stories are kind of not like, you know, they're relatively few and far between. And most people, you know, that live this lifestyle, you know, it grinds you down, and sometimes you just need to walk away from it for a little bit, you know, whether it's a couple months or a couple of years. But, you know, ultimately what brought us to the game to begin with was the love of the game, you know, like the love of performing, the love of writing, the love of being on stage, you know, and even being down and dirty and doing the van tours and being the weekend warrior. Just like you gotta love it, you know, and like you have to be in love with that kind of suffering, you know, to a certain degree. You know, or you gotta be able to, you know, sort of endure with a smile on your face, you know, knowing that it's for something, you know, and it's just because you love it. You're doing it for the love of the game, you know, not necessarily that you're going to make a ton of money, not necessarily that you're going to be a fucking rock star, but just because there's something about it that just, you know, again, like the writing, the performing, that like it has to be some of it that just has to be a part of you, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the way it's got to go, and you got to be able to maintain that too. I mean, no matter what level you get to, I mean, there's got to be some kind of passion behind playing music, being able to continue progressing yourself in some way, shape, or form. I mean, of course, there are those musicians or those bands that get that golden ticket where they can just live off music for the rest of their lives, and they can put out anything, and people will be able to enjoy it, whether their heart's in it or not. But for the rest of us, that passion's got to be in there, and whether you can become any kind of success, whether you stick to being a weekend warrior, whether you just become a studio band. I mean, there's so many different ways that bands can be in, but if you have that passion for the music and that writing, you never stop being a good musician.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like I had my buddy, I had a friend of mine named Justin, who was like one of the best guitar players, man, in Montreal. Like he's like an amazing rock metal guitar player. And he was like slugging it out for a long time, and he had done some tours with a band. And a couple of years ago, he was just like, you know what? Fuck this, like I'm out, I'm never gonna play guitar again. And he completely walked away from it. And when he did that, I was like, in my head, and I'm pretty sure I told him this, I'm just like, come on, man, like, you know, like this is like when I see you play, this is natural to you, like this is part of who you are. And sure as shit, you know, a couple years later, he has a new project and he's happy doing music again. It's just like, man, you know, when it's a part of you, you know, you can see it in you know it in yourself, and you can see it in others when it's like, no, this is a part of who you are. You can't shut it off. You can walk away from it for a little while. You can reprioritize how you want to approach it, but it's a part of you. You know, like I'm always going to be a performer, you know, and whether or not that can take a lot of different mediums, you know, like whether or not it's you know, fronting a metal band or I don't know, like, you know, who knows? Like maybe one day I'll do stand-up comedy or something like that. But I like performing, you know, and I like giving energy, and I like being in front of a crowd, like, and I dig that shit. So that is always going to be a part of me one way or another, you know, and I'm going to find a medium to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, and again, it's so great to hear that too, and you know, just maintaining that strive to be able to do that no matter what the medium is going to be, and that's really got me excited to see what's going to be happening in the future, you know, be it in Blackguard, be it anything like you talked about, like if you do stand-up comedy or if you go in another kind of entertainment direction or something like that, you know, it's just, you know, just having that drive to be able to want to continue on this way and having this rejuvenation with Blackguard. I can't wait to see what's going to be coming up next.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like there was a little bit of talk about maybe going and writing, like, I mean, because there was no expectation necessarily coming into this, especially in regards to Blackguard specifically. It's like, all right, well, we're going to put this out and then we're going to see what happens. And, you know, we haven't had like any kind of long, drawn-out discussions about whether or not we want to actually write new music, but the thought had been kind of tossed around a little bit. You know, it's not explored yet. I mean, this record just came out, so I'm really looking forward to doing some shows and playing locally and then kind of seeing what kind of opportunities kind of come up. Like Jesus Christ, man, like next year, like I want to get back on 70,000 Tons so fucking badly. Like we did the very first year, and I think next year will be like 10 years since the last time we did it. So I'm kind of like, I really want to push to get back on the boat, which would be a lot of fucking fun. And you know what? Like, that's it. Like, I want to take it one day at a time, and we'll see what, you know, without having to go necessarily broke doing it. Like, let's see how much fun we can kind of extract from this, which, you know, like at the end of the day, that's kind of what everybody should be. That should be everybody's motivation, is to try to extract the most amount of fun from this. So with Blackguard, man, we're going to do some shows. You know, maybe at the end, maybe in a couple months from now, we'll start talking about doing new music, or maybe not. Maybe Storm will be our swan song, and then we'll wind up hanging it up after this. But again, who knows, man? Like, we're not at that bridge yet, and we'll cross that later on.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. And I mean, in addition to that, it's like, fuck, man, like it's hilarious that like in the last couple of years, like I haven't been doing much, like too much in terms of music, and then now all of a sudden, like this year, I'm probably gonna be doing so much fucking music, because I mean, so Blackguard's doing its thing, but I've also been on and off working on a death metal project called Ages with some of my buds, and we're going to be releasing an EP in mid-March. So we're going to start doing. So I'm going to be doing a lot more shows with them too, which is going to be fucking crazy. And like, I'm super like, so like, I went from, you know, releasing no music for 10 years to releasing relatively two albums in the course of three and a half months. So it's going to be an interesting 2020 for me.
Oh, totally. And, you know, the first part of that with Blackguard, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, that's the way you should be going about it. Like, just trying to have fun, whether there's a bunch of shows in the future, whether it's just a few shows, you know, hopefully getting back on 70,000 Tons. I mean, that would just be incredible to see that. And, you know, like you said, whether it's a swan song, whether it's the rejuvenation of the band, whatever happens, you know, the important thing is to be having fun with that. And now knowing that there is another band in the works that you have with Ages, I mean, that got me really excited to be able to hear that.
Yeah. We man, it's because we've put out like 3 singles. Like if you look online, I mean, if you just type in Ages, like not like your search engine will fucking blow up, because there's so many different things with the word Ages in it. But I think if you look up Ages band, we have 3 singles that are out. That, I mean, we put out one song in like 2015, and then another one like a year and a half later. But it's been a weird project, because we have like within the band, it's, you know, it was primarily a studio project, so it's hard to get people everybody's doing life happens, so everybody's doing different things. But in the last like year or so, we've had to kind of like shore up the lineup again. We had to get a couple new members, and then we just went on a fucking writing spree. So now we had 6 songs. We recorded them earlier in the year, and now it's going to come out. So, and I'm super pleased with it. Like, I'm very happy with this material. It's very different than Blackguard. It's more death metal, a little progressive, I guess a little quarry, and like a little deathcore at the same time, because there are breakdowns and shit like that. But it's fun. But it's fun for me to be able to do something like stylistically completely different too. You know, like Lord knows I've been doing Blackguard, and then I went from Blackguard to Crimson Shadows, which is just like Blackguard adjacent music, more power metal-y instead of death metal-y. So it's kind of like, all right, well now let's go even heavier now. So it's like it's great to have you know Ages as a voice for myself, and different subject matters and whatnot that I get to talk about, and I get to sort of express myself differently on stage, and it's just a different energy, you know. So I'm very excited, and we're doing a show on March 13th with do you know Augury from Montreal?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So we're like, Augury's doing they're going to play the whole first album Concealed from back to front, and so we're direct support for that, which is like I couldn't be happier to play on a fucking bill with an Ages show with these guys, with the Augury cats. Like we've known those guys forever, so it's cool. Like it's going to be a really good Montreal metal night.
Oh, That is just so incredible. I mean, with what's going on already, I mean, the fact that you get to open for Epica and then go and open for Augury like that into two different kinds of bands. I mean, I gotta imagine that creativity is just like flowing through you right now, being able to show off those different sides.
Yeah, it feels really good to be able to switch gears, because I mean, I think not that you get, I mean, there's definitely a tendency maybe to get bogged down when you're doing one style, and then once you get to shift over to something completely different, I feel like it definitely opens more creative pathways, because now you're looking at the music a little bit differently, like the same but differently. You're like, I got to explore maybe like different vocal techniques and different placements, and also just having to write my own vocal patterns against music that was so unlike what I've had to do in the past. Like you have no choice but to stretch your creative muscles a little bit because you're not used to that. So now it's like, okay, what patterns am I writing over a blast beat and like this breakdown, and how can I toy with this and how can I make it interesting? So like in terms of like the creative aspect of it is like it was extremely refreshing being able to play some of these newer songs that we've written for ages. Was like, man, like, this is great. I've never done anything like this before. So it is extremely rejuvenating in that sense.
Yeah, and again, it's just I'm so happy to see that too, and I keep saying that, but I really am, because it's like we've all heard the horror stories about what can happen with music, and some people really are able to get back into it after a few years, and I'm so glad to see that you're able to do that in this situation, because I've always loved Blackguard, and just the fact that Storm was eventually able to come out, and not just that, but being a fantastic album, and now being able to see that Ages is going to be going live, releasing music, and whatever happens going forward with that too, whatever way your life is going to go in the future, musically, not musically, and entertainment in general, I'm just, as a fan, I'm so happy to see this is happening for you, because it is well deserved.
Thank you very much, man. Like, I appreciate it. I'm really happy to hear that y'all dig it, like that you dig it, and that people have been receiving the album like very positive. I think I've only read like one really shitty comment on YouTube, and that was just funny. I fucking loved it anyway. So.
Oh, definitely. I mean, some of those really negative reviews can be some of the funniest things you can read.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very weird freedom right now with Blackguard in not being beholden to a label or a booking agent or a manager. There's not a nut that we have to make. There's not so much, we don't have to bring in a certain amount of revenue anymore. It's just like, fuck it, we can do literally whatever we want. Like, it's so liberating. And you know what? If it came out and everybody hated it, then it would have been just as fine. It would have been like, people didn't dig it. Okay, cool, whatever. We'll do a couple shows for the people that want us and want to see us. And I mean, it really ultimately wouldn't have changed anything. It's one thing when you're approaching a band, and especially once you get into kind of like quote unquote career mode, when you're signed, like, if you're in a band and you start getting signed to a label, and the goal is to, if you're looking for the number one spot, if you're looking to be a big dog in the scene, then you have to always be looking to get better and bigger and this, that, and the other thing. And then, in our case, since we're not really in that race anymore, I don't fucking care. It's really beautiful to not fucking care anymore. Where all I have to care about is all I have to really focus on is just to make sure that however I'm approaching it, that I'm approaching it with, the same amount of love and passion for the music that I've, in reality that I've always had. But it's great not having the static of the business in the background,
Oh yeah, and that's one proponent that can just tear a band apart in and of itself, is the labels and the financial issues that come with that, and the touring and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, especially within the last few years, almost a decade, I mean, the rise of being able to do things DIY and, releasing music on your own, being able to release videos on your own, being able to book shows online through friends that that you may have never played a show with before, or even in the same country. country, but if you can work together to be able to put on a show together, or there's so many different ways that you can go about it, and, you know, putting up your music for people to be able to check it out on legitimate sites, you know, like Bandcamp, and they're able to send the money right to you so they can check out the album. I mean, there's so many great things that have happened since Firefight that you can be in that position where you don't have to worry about a label again, and you can just have fun with the music that you're performing again.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like there's no pressure anymore. There's no like, all right, we got to make this many views, or we got to sell this, we got to sell more records than before. Like, fuck it, who gives a shit? Like, you know, people are gonna, and especially these days, like, man, I hope people are streaming the shit out of it on Spotify. So like, that's all I care about. You know, like, and it was great, really, to like the only motivation, or one of the primary motivations for putting out this record, was just for the fans, for the people that like this, you know, for anybody that ever bought a shirt or ever like said they appreciate the music, you know, like for every single person that ever loved one of our songs, this record came out for them, because I mean, like, that's the only reason why I wanted to get it out. I mean, yes, it was for, you know, and I hope I'm not completely contradicting myself here, because, you know, it was, you know, this was a labor of love for us, and I did want to see this piece of art come out for myself as well. But at the same time, it's just like, because it's lacking the motivation of the quote-unquote career, it's really coming out just for the people that already know us. And I hope that, you know, new people get exposed to the music. That would be great, but it's not even close to, like, it's not even in the back of my mind as a motivation. I don't care about making new fans. It's like, this is strictly for the people that really know us, you know? So, like, I just want them to have this, you know, because I know a lot of people were waiting for it for a long time, you know, and it makes me happy to see them happy.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely one of those people too. I mean, with how many times I was able to see you guys here in Minnesota, and, you know, just like waiting for that next album. I mean, whether it happened or not, I still remember those shows, be it good venues here, be it terrible venues here. You know, I imagine that's the case everywhere, but, you know, just there's so many good memories I have of every show that I've ever seen you guys at, and, you know, just knowing that Storm, when I first heard that Storm was going to be coming out, it just brought back so many of those great memories, and it made me so excited to be able to check out this album. And when I finally did, those memories just shine through once again, and, you know, just remembering those times, and just being able to hear music that could have happened immediately after Firefight, but you know, with it coming out here in 2020 and just a couple weeks back, it's just great to be able to hear some new Blackguard music. And again, you know, whatever comes of it, come what may, but, you know, Storm sounds great in and of itself, and it stands alone, and it's just great to be able to hear that.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, here's to whatever the future brings. Hopefully the future brings the guys in Insomnium giving us a call and saying, hey, let's go on a tour in North America and Europe together, because that would be amazing. That's one thing that would make me want to fucking go tour again, is if it was with those guys. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and they, not just some of the nicest guys around too, but, you know, just like they put out masterpiece after masterpiece of music every single time.
They're just the fucking best.
Oh, it's so true. And, you know, I think with that, I think that's an amazing note to end on. And with a little bit of hope there, I mean, maybe the guys in Insomnium will be able to get to check out this interview, and they'll get a hold of their booking agent, and maybe something would happen. But, you know,
when you put it out, I'm going to definitely tag the guys and be like, hey, check this out.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much again for reaching out, and we can do this interview. This was an interview I wanted to do since I started in 2011, and, you know, it took a while for that to happen too. You know, just like Storm, it took a while till 2020 to make it happen, but I'm so happy that I was able to give Storm a little bit more promotion, being able to show it off on my show, on YouTube, social media, and all that stuff, because this is an album for people who who are either new to Blackguard or they remember Blackguard being able to check this out, check out this interview, and just see where you're at right now in 2020. And I just got to say, the mentality that you have right now is just so refreshing to hear that too. And it just shows that no matter what happens in your life, as long as you still have that strive to do what you want to do, good things can happen. And I'm glad to see these, the shackles of what can happen in the music industry being broken free, and you get to just be yourself. And it was great being able to talk about that.
Thanks, man. I'm super happy to be able to talk to you about this too. So thank you very much for having me on the show.